sometimes when these two big teams, these two title contenders go head-to-head, particularly earlier in the season, the fear of losing overrides the desire to win. But I don't actually think a point really helps either of them out because of the Arsenal situation. So I think they're both going to go all guns blazing for victory.
Look, Liverpool put in their best performance of the season against Real Madrid. City look like they're getting stronger and stronger. Not only is it a crucial game, but for the neutral, it is get the popcorn, put your feet up and sit back and enjoy. Because these are two teams that won't play how the other one doesn't want them to play. They'll play how they want to play.
No, it's going to be an absolute cracker, and I think the sort of scoreboard pressure of the table that you guys were talking about there makes it even more appealing.
Erling Haaland, 27 goals for club and country. Really, a lot rests on his shoulders.
He is one of the greatest goal scorers this planet has produced, and I think we'll look back on his career when it finishes and there'll be no argument about that. How can you not rely on him?
But he doesn't compare himself to Messi and Ronaldo. He says, no, they're in a different league. I'm not sure they are, fella.
In terms of where he is right now, in terms of the pure numbers, he's absolutely right up there.
I can't wait for this. Yes, it's Premier League All Access with $1 Million Minto, and the big boy Crookie is here. Gentlemen, what freaked you out more? The fact that Crookie got a little bit of a warning this week. Just a little bit of a ticking off in a playful sense, right? Okay. Make sure that you are on top form when you come in on Friday. Actually, it was straight after another warning that he got last Friday, which was make sure that you're not hungover on Sunday for the big game. So it's just people getting a little bit wary of Crookmaster's off-the-field habits here. Was that the weirdest thing you heard this week, that someone actually took him to task, Scott, or the fact that Snoop Dogg came out in support of Martin O'Neill and the re-emergence of Ange Postecoglou? Because apparently Snoop Dogg is a massive Celtic fan. Didn't know that.
I didn't know that, and that is pretty weird. But anybody questioning the fact that Alex Crook can't burn the candle at both ends and still be absolutely on it when it comes to that light going on, being on air, is definitely weird, or doesn't know Crookie. I was with him at producer Deck's wedding. He was top form. He won man of the match. And I also listened to a bit of him the following day, where I think not only did he do work with, was it with you or was it Hugh on the Sunday session? But he also
it was Hugh this week.
Yeah, he also stopped off. I listened to on the way home to get some breaking news, and then he did the pod, of course, with you guys in the evening as well. So
I know
he's a legend.
He is a hero. He's a hero. People don't realise how much of a hero he is. And as I said a couple of times now, he has told us this is Crookie's world, and we're all just living in it. I think it's Erling Haaland's world right now. He broke another record in midweek. I watched that at the Etihad Stadium on Wednesday night. I thought he was absolutely superb. And not as good as Phil Foden, who was off the scale. His two finishes were absolutely sublime. I went to Prague as well on Tuesday night with Arsenal. Very, very good. They strangled Slavia Prague. Who else did other games? Liverpool, Newcastle, anybody else did any other game?
I did the Slavia Prague Arsenal as well, and I also did the Karabag Chelsea one.
No. I sorry. Did anyone do any other games? I don't want to talk about that one. Anyone do any other games? Any other games? No? Okay, all right, fine. Well, Liverpool were good, apparently. And Arsenal were good. And Newcastle were good. Spurs... And Spurs were good, weren't they? Well done to them. Everyone on track. Look, wins for all the Premier League sides, barring Chelsea. They've got to trek back from Azerbaijan now. Scott, what's your view on it? I mean, look, I don't really want to talk about it, but Adrian Durham was in agreement with me on Wednesday night. I don't think it's a good point. I think it's a bad point because they've got Napoli, Barcelona and Atalanta still to play. Two of those games, very, very tough away trips.
Yeah, I said the same. It's not a good point. It's a game. I was thinking of the Barcelona in particular, but you're right to mention those other ones. After losing the first game, a match day one, which I think was completely understandable, they needed 3 straight victories. And look, where do we want to go with this in terms of Chelsea?
Well, let's not go too deep because we're going to come back to them in just a second because we've got them live on Saturday night when they play Wolves. But just an overall view of their Champions League really is what we want here.
Yeah, I think if Chelsea had got the win last night, then I think it would have been a very good start to the campaign, something they haven't been involved in for a good few years. As I say, to lose to Bayern Munich is understandable, away from home, match day one, but you've got to beat Karabag. It's as simple as that. And there were a few little points that I made, which you can make a little bit later if you want.
Okay, all right. Well, keep your powder dry. Crook, your biggest takeaway from the Champions League this week?
I think Newcastle, actually, starting to grow into that competition, sitting pretty now in the top 8 positions. And I heard Eddie Howe speaking after the game saying they need to take that Champions League form into the Premier League now, because it has been quite an inconsistent start domestically. But that was a good win for them. Nice, solid result at home with no dramas.
Yeah, I think we had this chat sort of privately, didn't we? And I know they weren't very good on Sunday, but I think they can throw those performances in every now and again. They're a little bit inconsistent like that. But largely, actually, over the course of the season, their performances have been very good, even if their results haven't been great. I think they look pretty controlled in those games. And one of the things that I sort of noticed this week, I don't know if you agree with this, Crook, is that when you look at the Champions League, the English teams, they are on a different level compared with most of what else is available in the Champions League. If you Bayern Munich, Real Madrid, Barcelona, maybe Inter Milan, and the English teams, they're just head and shoulders above everything else.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I would just hesitate with a word of caution, because it was a similar story last season. Liverpool topped the group. I know Manchester City struggled to qualify, but we didn't end up having a Champions League finalist. Arsenal lost in the semi-finals. So the disadvantage English teams have got, in my opinion, when you get to the knockout stages, teams like Bayern Munich, by and large, have got their league sewn up. It might even be the same for Real Madrid. So they can afford to rotate players for their league games. Teams like Liverpool and Arsenal and Newcastle and Tottenham and Chelsea, they're not going to have that luxury. So let's judge just how strong the Premier League is in Europe once we get deep into the competition, as opposed to these league games.
Yeah, I love the fact that we're disappointed and we're not happy about last season because we didn't have a finalist. There was a period of time where we didn't have finalists for many, many years. Now, if it goes 1 year without us having someone at the big showpiece event, we are furious about it, which is good. We're raising our standards. Liverpool raising their standards as well. A huge win for them in midweek. They've picked up back-to-back victories. Next up for them, a massive match, which Crook and I will be at on Sunday. Manchester City against Liverpool. This is the big game of the Premier League weekend. Manchester City against Liverpool. It's at the Etihad Stadium. It feels like a seismic week for both these two teams, Scott, who probably both need to win, because dropping points here could offer Arsenal the opportunity to extend their lead at the top of the table even further.
Yeah. And look, it's still early days, shall we say, but City could be 9 points off Arsenal. Liverpool could be 10. And that's a lot to catch up, especially when Arsenal are in this type of form. And I just look back at last season, where we weren't expecting Liverpool to have the start that they had. And we're thinking at some point they'll fall away, and they kind of didn't. And I actually feel Arsenal in a stronger position to do even better. So I think this is an absolutely crucial game. It really is. And look, Liverpool put in their best performance of the season against Real Madrid. I thought they were absolutely brilliant from start to finish. City look like they're getting stronger and stronger. So this is, not only is it a crucial game, but for the neutral, it is get the popcorn, put your feet up and sit back and enjoy, because these are two teams that won't play how the other one doesn't want them to play. They'll play how they want to play.
Crook, you and I are going to this game. We are going to go into that Manchester City press room where they do sweets and get a whole bag, sit up there for 5 hours and just enjoy ourselves. I was at the City game in midweek, and I think I said this to you on a WhatsApp. I absolutely loved it. It was brilliant because City aren't perfect, so they still give chances. They are a little bit loose sometimes in possession, and they have the ball turned over on them, but yet they've still got deadly firepower. And that usually comes with a mix of great entertainment. And that certainly was the case on Wednesday night. It looks like a comfortable scoreline 4-1, but actually they started on the back foot, ended on the back foot, and it was just the middle bit where they took control of the game. I can't wait for this.
No, it's going to be an absolute cracker. And I think the sort of scoreboard pressure of the table that you guys were talking about there makes it even more appealing, because sometimes when these two big teams, these two title contenders go head to head, particularly earlier in the season, the fear of losing overrides the desire to win. But I don't actually think a point really helps either of them out because of the Arsenal situation. So I think they're both going to go all guns blazing for victory. I am expecting goals because you're right about Manchester City. They don't keep many clean sheets. Liverpool have tightened up defensively in their last two games, but I still wouldn't be 100% confident that they can shut out Erling Haaland and Phil Foden if he's in the form that he was in midweek. So it's going to be an absolutely tantalising football match. I will echo what Scott said. Liverpool won, Real Madrid 0 makes it sound like it was a cagey victory, a hard-fought win. It wasn't. Liverpool were the dominant force and they could have won by more.
Yeah, Madrid were quite poor, but Bradley and Robertson were sensational in the fullback areas. Have they shown that they should be first choice now ahead of Kirkes and Frimpong? Scott, when everyone is fit, you know a little bit more about fullbacks than me and Crook.
Well, I don't know. You were left back yourself, weren't you, back in the day, Sam?
Yes, but I never played in the Champions League.
Okay. Yes.
I didn't have a Champions League record either.
Yeah, exactly. You've got to be in it to win it. The short answer is yes, Sam. I mean, I wasn't sure if we were going to mention these two, but Conor Bradley in particular, he must want to play Real Madrid week in, week out. I mean, the two times he's played them, he's been sensational. And with Kirkes, again, I said last season, it's one thing, I'm not doubting his talent, I'm not doubting he can still be a success at Liverpool. But it's one thing to play for a club like Bournemouth, it's another thing to play for a club like Liverpool. And Andy Robertson, I thought, was absolutely superb. So those two have been brilliant. They have to play. And from a defensive point of view, as well as going forward, they do add a lot. So, yeah, it was a brilliant performance midweek from both of them. I was really pleased with both of them.
Dominic Szoboszlai, also impressive. Is he becoming one of Liverpool's most important players now, Crook? Always features, not always in the same position, but always has an impact.
Yeah, I think he's been probably their most consistent performer over the course of the season. You go right back to that Arsenal game when they weren't brilliant and he came up with the match-winning moment with the 25-yard free kick. And I saw our own Kevin Hatchard, who obviously is a big Liverpool fan, he was saying that Szoboszlai is a £100 million player who'd get into any team in Europe. And it's hard to disagree. You look at that midfield trio, Alexis McAllister has probably not been the same Alexis McAllister this season as we saw last. Ryan Gravenberch, I think because of injury, has also not dominated games in the way that he did last year, but Szoboszlai's levels have never dipped, and I think he's become a real leader in that dressing room as well.
As for Manchester City, another impressive performance in midweek. I mean, look, I'd look back at the statistics. They don't win by huge scorelines very often anymore. I mean, they beat Wolves and Burnley, and they've beaten Borussia Dortmund by 4-1, but that hasn't been the way of the season so far. But it feels like they're in a little bit of a groove now. Erling Haaland, 27 goals for club and country. He could end up on 40-plus goals this season, just in the Premier League alone, the way he is going, especially bearing in mind that he scores the majority of goals that Manchester City managed to score. I mean, I look back at the statistics last night. Yes, Foden chipped in with 2 last night. Cherky nabbed 1 at the end after a mistake. But really, a lot rests on his shoulders.
Yeah, and what is it, 54 goals in 52 Champions League games, something like that? I mean,
yeah, he's really struggling, actually. But he doesn't compare himself to Messi and Ronaldo. He says, no, they're in a different league. I'm not sure they are, fella.
Well, in terms of longevity, they are, and he's just got to do it season after season after season. But in terms of where he is right now, in terms of the pure numbers, he's absolutely right up there. And look, I was asked a question the other day, are they a one-man side? Of course, they're not a one-man side. Do they over-rely on him too much? Well, yes, but there's only 3 or 4 players that actually have the quality that he has. You know, Harry Kane, maybe even Lewandowski doesn't have it anymore, Mbappe. But what I do feel is that even if he was injured, then they've got enough quality around where they can do what Arsenal are doing, what Chelsea are doing, what other clubs are doing as well, where they can other players to chip in. But when you've got someone as good as him, and he is one of the greatest goal scorers this planet has produced, and I think we'll look back on his career when it finishes and there'll be no argument about that. How can you not rely on him?
Yeah, he was excellent in the press conference before the game as well. He talked about certain facets of his game. He gets really frustrated if he ever goes offside, and you'll probably notice that he doesn't really. In fact, he gave us a statistic saying that he's only been offside 18 times since he joined Manchester City. And the fact that he knew that and was able to recall that sort of shows you how obsessive he is about making sure that he times his runs to perfection. He also talks about the chemistry he started to build up with Ryan Cherky, who I think is emerging as a real talent for Manchester City and looks like he's living up to the expectation that people had of him when he first signed. And I want to have a little word for Nico Gonzalez because he's not Rodri, no one is, and it's very difficult to fill those shoes. However, I think over the last few weeks and months, he has started to feel a little bit more comfortable in the middle of the park. And last night, for long periods, okay, there was a little bit towards the end of the game where they got a little bit loose, where he really dictated the tempo of that game and was the protector in front of the back four and allowed Foden and Reinders to get up in support of the attack. I thought he was terrific last night, Crook.
Yeah, and I think he's probably a prime example of what we've been talking about when it comes to Florian Wirtz, who's obviously going to be on the opposing side on Sunday, that coming from a foreign league into the Premier League, which is a beast like no other, some players take longer to find their feet. And I also think Gonzalez probably is benefiting from the fact that City are more like the City of old this season. Obviously, when he came in last year, it was a struggling team. Even Pep Guardiola was sort of, scratching his own face at times about how to get the best out of his team. So it wasn't an environment where it was going to be particularly easy to shine. He has looked a lot better. He isn't Rodri, as you say, but they need him because, was it Alan Pardew who said to us, Sam, that his fear with Rodri, because he's had such a serious injury, is that he's going to come back, he's going to pick up niggles, he's going to miss more game time, and that's exactly what's transpiring.
Yeah, I don't think you were there when he said it. You were off having a little busy moment where you were doing a bit of a hit on breakfast round the corner whilst me and Alan were having that conversation, if I remember rightly. We were having breakfast in the sunshine, actually, weren't we, when we had that conversation? But yeah, because you know what he's like, Scott. He's always doing something. He's always on his phone, or he's always doing a little video for someone, or he's always running around the corner to do a quick hit on breakfast. Oh, got some breaking news for you. That's his beauty. That is his beauty. He's like our Rodri. God forbid he gets injured. Are we ever going to see Rodri get up to the standard he was before his injury?
I'm now more concerned about Crookie being injured now. Yes, I think you can have a certain worry, but I think he'll be okay. I do. I mean, it's well known in football when you're out for a very long time. It's not always the injury when you come back. It's other little niggles because the rest of your body is not up to standard. So, and Premier League ready. So I'm not surprised at all there are injuries. I mean, I thought about this last night actually, and I look at Alan Shearer, who had 2 cruciate ligament injuries, and yet was still scoring goals for fun after both of those. You could argue he wasn't quite the same player, and he was clever enough and good enough to adapt, but he still was incredibly effective. And Rodri is not looking to have that explosive pace that Alan Shearer would have had. So, no, I think he's intelligent enough. Just get the body right. It might take another season quite often after you've been out for one season to get properly right again. And that's where Nico Gonzalez is absolutely crucial. Because if City are to win the Premier League or the Champions League, then he almost has to be their Rodri, because we've talked about how good they are going forward and the players that they've got. They need protection on that transition, and that's where he comes in.
That's it for the standout game of the weekend. Let's look at the rest of the weekend now, kicking off at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Tottenham against Manchester United, live on talkSPORT on Saturday morning. I can't wait for this one. A comfortable home win for Spurs in midweek, albeit thanks to some dodgy goalkeeping and a little bit of odd defending. But in the league, they have not been amazing at home. In fact, if you look at the data, Spurs produced the worst attacking performance of the season in the Premier League last week. And this league has West Ham in it. So what's on the menu this week, Crook? A comfortable Manchester United victory?
Listen, it's never a comfortable Manchester United victory. They can be 3-0 up at home against Brighton and still concede 2 goals and end up hanging on for the win. So, no, it won't be comfortable, but I think they should be confident of going there and at least avoiding defeat. United in a good vein of form. You've mentioned their Spurs record at home. I think Copenhagen were the perfect opponents for them in midweek to build up a bit of confidence and maybe change some of the negativity around the place, because obviously that affected Jed Spence and Mickey van der Ven at the end of the Chelsea game. It wasn't so much they were snubbing Thomas Frank, but more they were frustrated that the fans were giving them a bit of jip, and it's not been a happy hunting ground going right back to last season under Ange Postecoglou. So I think if United play as well as they have been, and they cut out the type of defensive mistakes they made early in that second half against Forest, then they can do what they failed to do in 4 attempts last season and get something from this game. I've gone for a narrow 2-1 United victory, just on the basis that I know they, scored a few against Copenhagen, but they don't look to me a team, Tottenham, who are going to run away with any games in the Premier League. It's always going to be a bit of a slogfest at this stage.
Yeah, I mean, that area of the pitch is the one of real concern, I think. Great goal from Mickey van de Ven in midweek, but he is their top scorer. And as much as everyone will be pleased that he's chipping in with goals, he's got 6 so far this season. That would be a bit of a concern, bearing in mind that everybody else is struggling to find consistency in front of goal. The problem for me, Scott, and we talk about shot data quite a lot when we're analysing whether or not a team is productive or not. They've managed just 17 shots on target in their last 6 games in the Premier League. And even with backup personnel and not really having your full complement available, they've got enough talent to have more than that, surely.
Yeah, but can we just rewind a little bit? Are you just saying great goal, Van de Ven, and then leaving it there?
No, I'm going to come back to it. What I was going to do is let you talk about the rest of the problems, and then I was going to ask everybody to vote what was their favourite central defender goal this week. Mickey van de Ven or Big Dan Burns' header that curls. Which one is it? All right, we'll come back to that in just a second. Do you want to talk about the problems first?
Okay, fair enough. Look, I said this midweek. If you look at the tables, actually they're not doing that bad in either the Champions League or the Premier League. But you're absolutely right. The underlying performances, which you would then, no one knows the future, but you can gauge on what could happen in the future, are not looking good. Now, what I would say is, 1, you've got a new manager coming in. 2, you've still got plenty of creativity that are injured, basically not even on the bench. 3, you've spent 50 odd million pounds on a player who's not performing at the moment. And yes, you've got to try and get the best out of him. But ultimately, as we talked about Wirtz and others, they've got to find a way to be really good. And 4, you look at what happened last season where they finished 17th and they were so open defensively. Thomas Frank was pretty open to say, look, I've got to sort out the defence first. And once we've sorted that out, we can try and get further forward. Now, Spurs fans, like a lot of fans, will say, well, no, that you should be able to do both, but it just doesn't come that quickly with all those ingredients, Sam. And look, while you're not playing well and you're still where you are, and I get it, against Chelsea, what was it, 0.05, the XG. They were shocking. They were terrible. It was a 1-0 thrashing. It's got to get better. He knows he's got to find a way to do that, but I just think it takes time. And it's not something which, and I heard Thomas Frank is a pragmatic manager. Well, he was a pragmatic manager for Brentford in the Premier League because it was Brentford in the Premier League. I covered Brentford enough in the Championship where he wasn't a pragmatic manager. He was a very free-flowing and really good football. So it stages and it takes time. But of course, we don't have time in football. It is what it is, and he's got to deal with it right now.
There's no time. It all has to be done now. And if you're not top of the league now, Crook wants you fired. Okay, so let's vote. Okay, so Mickey van de Ven, who picks the ball up on the edge of his own penalty area and slaloms his way through the Copenhagen defence. I mean, admittedly, it would have been nice for someone to make a tackle. However, forget that. It was a very, very, very good goal. In fact, I actually think it's one of my favourite goals because if you're commentating on that, and I wasn't, but I heard the talkSPORT commentary of it, and it was picked up right on the edge of the penalty area, and it sounded great. And you love that. As a commentator, if you pick up Mickey van de Ven on the edge of the penalty area and follow him all the way, it's just a brilliant moment. And then there was the other one, which was Big Dan Burns' header. Now, he not only gets, I mean, it's a free header, yes, I know, but he's miles out. It's a bullet, but it's got curl on it. How is that happening? So which one's your favourite? Crook.
I think Van de Ven, I think seeing a player carry the ball so powerfully as he did, I think is always a sight to behold. I commentated the Son goal against Burnley a few years ago, and I understand exactly what you're saying because you pick it up early and it's one of those, he's still running. Oh my word, he's going to go all the way here. So yeah, I'm going to go with that. But I think the the Burn header was special as well. Arguably even better than the one he scored in the League Cup final at Wembley, which of course won me a few quid at 66-1. Loved it.
Yes, we both had that, didn't we? And we were getting really excited. And I was in the commentary box with with Darren Bent, and I was showing him, look, I had Dan Burn first goal scorer, because Crook and I had a conversation about it beforehand about set pieces, and we decided to go. It wasn't 66, it was 33, wasn't it?
I got 66. You jumped on the bandwagon.
How did you get
got a little bit
66?
less. I was on it from an early stage. You got to give me the credit for this one. You say we had a conversation.
Okay,
I told you I'm backing Dan Burn, and you jumped on.
I did. Yeah, right. You're right. I don't think it was 66. I'd like to see that betting slip. Anyway, well done, Crook. Sorry, I forgot. We have to give him a clap. Well done. You picked it. So what are you going for, Scott?
Well, the Son goal came into my mind, and I now want to listen back to the commentary if Crookie was doing it, because I'm sure it's up there with they think it's all over and should be played many times.
Are we going to have to give him another well done medal?
I think we might have to now. We all living in Crookie's world. We know that. I mean, the Dan Burn goal was incredible. I mean, even a yard away from the goal, you're thinking that's still not going in, even though you know it's going in because you're watching it on a replay. It was almost like enough swags on the Roberto Carlos goal. Remember that one? The sort of 40 yards out. You know, the last second it really dips in. But Van der Ven for me, every day of the week and twice on Sunday. That's goal of the season. I will not see a better goal than that from now anywhere in Europe. And to think a centre back did that as well. That's just incredible. There's not many people in the world that can do that.
Can't believe you've shunned a left back's goal for a centre back's goal. Outrageous. You're going to be kicked out of the union. I'm going to go big Dan Burn. I just love the arc on the header. I just thought it was great. And also, we can't all go for Mickey van der Ven, although it was very, very good. And I think he's a brilliant defender. And I think he's a major asset to the Premier League, Van der Ven, actually. Xavi Simons, will he be a major asset to the Premier League? Simons, he struggled a little bit this season. Had a good game in midweek in Europe. There's a little bit more room, and Copenhagen aren't the greatest. Is it the pace and physicality of the Premier League that has probably just set him back a little bit? Do we have to have a little bit of patience like we have with Wirtz and Gonzalez, like we mentioned earlier?
Yeah, absolutely. And also I think in the Premier League, he's been shifted around positionally. Sometimes he plays on the left of the 3 and behind the striker. Sometimes he plays in the 10, which I think is his natural position. But there are also players, and I'm not saying this is going to be the case with him, but there are players who come to English football and they're better suited to playing in the Champions League. Juan Sebastian Veron springs to mind, signed for a lot of money, not just by Manchester United, but Chelsea as well. Didn't really do it in the Premier League, but whenever he played in Europe for United, he was really good, because it is a different animal, isn't it? The Champions League to the Premier League.
From a United perspective, how good is it, Scott, to have a full week off to prepare for this game when Tottenham have been worrying about Champions League football?
Yeah, it definitely helps, and that's one of the only positive really of being as rubbish as they were last week, last season. But it does, absolutely. You turn any sort of negative into a positive. He's had all week to train. I think they would have been disappointed in the goals that they conceded as well at the City ground and not carry on that winning run. That Crookie's mate was still have to wait to cut his hair for a good few months yet.
Do you know what? Just on that, right? Nobody wins 5 games in a row in the Premier League, unless you're Arsenal. Nobody wins 5 games in a row. So he might never get a haircut, that fella. Like, never.
Is it 5 Premier League games in a row?
Well, it is now,
or
because we're out of the League Cup and we're out of Europe. We're not in Europe. So.
Yes, you've got no choice. Listen,
wait for the FA Cup to come along.
It looks good. It looks good on him. It looks good on him. Have you finished now, Scott? Sorry, because Crook interrupts you about hair.
To be honest, the short answer is yes. It's an absolute given that they've trained, they've slept well. There's no disruption at all, and what a great opportunity for United to carry on or play against the Spurs that played against Chelsea, not the one that was pretty much a shoe-in against Copenhagen.
By the way, I like that earlier in the podcast when I was talking about a conversation that I'd had with Alan Pardew, Crook managed to crowbar himself into it and say, we had the conversation. When we're talking about Dan Burn and his bet, and I said, we had the conversation, all of a sudden, it was his bet and his idea. It's funny how it's we when it's one way round and it's him when it's the other way round. Just pointing it out, folks, just pointing it out. I thought we came as a unit. I thought we were together. I thought we were basically married, you and I. I don't know.
We live in Crookie
Anyway.
world, Sam. We live in Crookie.
Oh, yes, I forgot. Sorry. Jason Wilcock's been vocal again this week, Crookie. 2 interviews in the space of a week. I know you've been following them closely. Inside Carrington, the podcast. Some takeaways for that. The club are looking to sign clean living pros and not Harlem Globetrotters. Sounds a little bit like talkSPORT's recruitment process. Not. Enormous amount of faith in Senna Lamons. I think his decision making is really good, by the way. He knows when to go long when he's under pressure, and I think that's really important. You know, he's not taking any chances. So good luck to him. I think he's been impressive. And he also talks about Benjamin Šeško, making Cunha and Mbeumo look a little bit better with all his selfless work. Something else that we've mentioned on this podcast. So, Jason Wilcock talking sense. Discuss.
Yeah, listen, my issue with it is we didn't hear from Jason Wilcox when United were struggling for results at the start of the season. 4 games unbeaten, suddenly he's available for interview every other day of the week. Let's just calm down a bit and see where we're at the end of the season. I do agree with him on Benjamin Šeško, by the way. I think sometimes strikers are judged purely on goals. Cunha was at the start of the season by non-United fans saying, well, his numbers aren't very good. Clearly you hadn't watched him play because, yes, he may not have been putting goals and assists on the board, but he was a real driving force, as we saw in that game at Anfield in particular. I think Šeško has been a good foil. He's got a couple of assists along the way. I'm not overly concerned. I think long-term he's going to go on and be a better number 9 for Manchester United than Rasmus Højlund. Just check your WhatsApps, by the way, boys. What price is that on the bet slip? Have a look.
66 to 1.
There you go.
Oh, you won't. Oh, yeah, but you bottled it. You bottled it. So the reason that I thought it was 33 to 1 is because of the returns. Ah, yes, because you bottled it. You didn't back yourself. So you didn't get as big a return as you should have done. Ah, okay. All right. Okay, that makes sense. I like it. Thank you very much for correcting us, Crook. I'm impressed. And by the way, has Jason Wilcox agreed to do an interview with you?
I don't think that'll be happening, do you?
Okay, well, we can ask him to come on our Friday show if you want. It might happen. This game, Tottenham against Manchester United, is live on talkSPORT, 12:30 on Saturday. Reshmin, Stewart and I will be there. Spurs have won 4 of the last 11. Manchester United unbeaten in 4, and they've overcome Liverpool, Brighton and Sunderland in that run. Also on talkSPORT at 8 o'clock on Saturday night. Very quickly, we'll do this. Chelsea against Wolverhampton Wanderers. Not the best midweeks for Chelsea. Scott, you were doing the game. A number of changes in midweek again. And this is one game before the international break. I'm not going to rant about it, but Enzo Maresca has made 85 changes to his starting lineup in 16 games this season. Is that disruption causing Chelsea a level of inconsistency?
Well, look, I did do the game. We made 7 changes for Karabag. And if you look at the back 4, back 5, I'd say that 4 of that 5, you could argue were definitely first team and first choice. The midfield, or certainly the attacking midfield, Esteval, Joao Pedro and Jamie Gittins, they will be arguing they should be first choice. My argument was, why are you putting Tyreek George up front when you've got not only Liam Delap on the bench, but Mark Guiu as well? And look, I don't want to criticise the guy too much. We know he's a good player. He hasn't played much for Chelsea, but both goals were down to Hato. And you can't afford to be giving away those type of goals and making those mistakes. And he almost gave away a penalty in the first half as well. If he doesn't make those mistakes, Chelsea go on and win the game. So, look, everyone was quiet when Chelsea went to Spurs and absolutely thrashed them 1-0. Now they're having a little bit of a pop because Chelsea haven't come away with all 3 points. When actually, for me, as much as I can criticise up front, it was Hato and his mistakes that made the difference.
Yeah, I don't think we were quiet when Chelsea went to Spurs and won, Scott.
No,
I don't think John Terry was either. I think we're all quite vocal about the proliferation of wins at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. But will they win when they play Wolves this weekend? That's the big question, because they have got the search for the new manager underway. Where are we with it, Crook? And is Rob Edwards really going to walk away from Borough?
Well, that's the big question. I think if he wants it, my information is that the job is his, as it was Gary O'Neill. They got very far down the line on Monday, pretty close to agreeing personal terms. Then he pulled out on Monday evening. And it's a big call, isn't it, for Rob Edwards to make that sentimental move, weighed up against the fact that Middlesbrough, a very stable club going well in the Championship. I don't think we're going to get the answer before this weekend. I was told yesterday that Wolves are preparing now for their interim duo of James Collins and Richard Walker to take charge. And it's been a bit of a mess, hasn't it, really? Because I think what Gary O'Neill did by getting so far down the line and then pulling out, maybe because of the backlash from fans, maybe because the contract terms weren't appealing to him, but he's made the hierarchy look quite stupid, because they've taken all that flack for trying to bring back a manager the fans didn't really want. And ultimately, that hasn't happened. Then you talk about Erik ten Hag. I'd be amazed if Erik ten Hag was willing to take the Wolves job. This is someone who's managed the biggest club in England, the biggest club in Holland. He's gone to Bayer Leverkusen, one of the top teams in Germany. Why on earth would he risk soiling his reputation by taking on a team who are destined for Championship football next season?
Ange is available.
He doesn't want it either. That was one of the first questions I asked when Vitor Pereira went.
Yeah, I didn't think he would. It's not the most attractive job, and we've talked about this over the course of the last few months. We've said, they are going to go down. They're going to go down this season, and it's been coming. And if you circle the drain long enough, eventually you go down the plug hole. That is what happens if you sell your best players and replace them with inexperience. They may be, these players that they bought in may well end up being superstars going forward, or good professionals in the Premier League later down the line. But with no Premier League experience, you're giving the manager, whoever it is, absolutely no chance. The burden of responsibility lays firmly on the shoulders of the people who have made those decisions, and not the people that have been standing in the dugout. Sunderland against Arsenal, 5:30. Granit Xhaka coming up against his old employers. He's been brilliant so far this season for Sunderland, who I thought were very good for the last hour of that game on Monday night, Scott.
Yeah, and obviously they were superb, weren't they, Crookie, at Stamford Bridge? Tactics absolutely spot on. Reggie Labrie, sensational manager since he's come in. What he did last season, what he's doing this season. Granit Xhaka, I can tell you from experience, you're even more up for it when you play your former club. And look, I said at the start of the show, they could, City or Liverpool could be 9 or 10 points behind. That's assuming that Arsenal do get the win, and this is one of the most difficult places to go in England right now. But I just think Arsenal are just so strong. I just think at this moment in time, where last season they couldn't turn the draws into wins, you and I both did, not together, the Slavia Prague game, they were under pressure for 20 minutes. They were very under pressure. They didn't have a shot on target. You could argue whether it's a little bit of luck, a VAR overturned for the goal, and then it was never in doubt. And they're just that team at the moment that they just need one moment. It does normally fall on a set piece, but they just need one moment because they've got those players, and then you've almost got no chance of scoring against them.
I thought they were terrific in midweek. Rice was absolutely superb. Marino, excellent. Saka, terrific. They went to Prague with a raft of injuries, and I don't think you can underplay that. They've got a lot of problems, especially in the front battalion. No Madueke, no Gyökeres, no Havertz, no Jesus. Ødegaard hasn't been fit all season. Zubimendi was suspended for this game. But yet they sort of just rode out the storm in the first 10 minutes of the game, dealt with this huge 6'5" striker in Khori, and then smothered the life out of Slavia Prague. And they came up with set piece after set piece, and it was coming. And I have to say, the other thing I sort of noticed by being around them for a couple of days was the fact that there is a proper unity about the group. There's a real sort of collectiveness about them. And I think they've got a great chance. They've got a great chance in all the competitions, but they've got a great chance, obviously, in the Premier League, but in the Champions League as well. Let's round things off by looking at the bottom of the table. West Ham have a huge opportunity to get back-to-back wins. Yes, we gave West Ham a little bit of stick earlier on today because we were talking about their attacking performance. I was referring in particular to their game against Brentford, which was a terrible match from their point of view, but they did get a win last week against Newcastle, and I wonder whether or not that is the sign of things to come. 4 of the bottom 5 face off against each other this weekend. It's a huge, huge week for West Ham, and I imagine that after that Newcastle win, it will feel, Crook, like a cloud has been lifted from their shoulders.
That was certainly the mood at London Stadium. Nuno Espirito Santo, not always the most convivial with the media, although he's got a lot better with that. But he was all smiles and all charm as he came into the radio room at the end of the game. I spoke to Freddie Potts as well. I think I talked about this on Sunday night. He speaks as well as he plays the game, and I think he could be a real Mark Noble style driving force moving forward. But I think it tells you all you need to know about how far West Ham have come, that we're in a last man standing competition, as you know. Most people are going for Chelsea as the tap-in to beat Wolves. Second favourites in terms of picks are West Ham. And I think this time last week, heading into that Newcastle game, you wouldn't really have put them up there to definitely beat Burnley. But it's a mark of how well they played. It's a great opportunity to get back-to-back victories. I think he'll name a very similar, if not an identical, starting lineup with Callum Wilson leading the line, Potts in midfield, as I mentioned, and Paquetá in that number 10 position. So it does feel like an opportunity for West Ham finally to build up some momentum. But don't underestimate Burnley. They've been a surprise to me. I thought they would really struggle, but they've actually been a lot more competitive than I thought they would be at the start of the season.
Yeah, Scott, it's a little bit complacent, isn't it? Just to think that because West Ham have picked up a good result against Newcastle, that they're going to do so against a team so regimented, so well organised, and with a threat as well. Jayden Anthony's played particularly well for Burnley this season. Scott Parker's team have pulled off some surprise results already.
Yeah, I'm actually hosting an event at the London Stadium later today where Aaron Wan-Bissaka, Callum Wilson and Jared Bowen, I'm going to be having a Q&A with them. So I'm looking forward to that.
And we thought Crook was the busy one.
And it's going to be an enjoyable Q&A rather than a very difficult Q&A. But Sam, this game is absolutely crucial. I've been looking at West Ham's fixtures coming up. After Burnley at home, it's Bournemouth away, Liverpool at home, United away, Brighton away, Villa at home, City away, until you get toward, it's Christmas. I mean, every single one of those are going to be really, really difficult. So you're right to say about Scotty Parker's team, and he's done really well. But this is, again, for me, this is a must-win game, and I'm going to be there with Adrian. I don't know if he's going to be there, but on the show, I'm really looking forward to seeing West Ham. I'm really hoping they turn it around, because even when they went 1-0 down against Newcastle last week, they showed great character and resilience, and we've not seen enough of that this season. They've been winning the duels that Nuno has been talking about, so they have to do the same again here. But it won't be easy against a very hard-working side.
You know how Adrian is allowed to pick wherever he wants to go, right? Okay, but this is how bad the London Stadium is that even though there's only a couple of Premier League games, he's decided to go to Stoke, right? So he's not coming to West Ham. That's a joke, West Ham fan. In fact, the West Ham fans would back me up on that, to be fair.
Luckily for you, though, Scott, I will be there holding your hand, so you won't be
great. Oh, great. All Scott's Christmases have just come at once. Scott knows he's going to be sitting there on his own in the stadium for most of the day while Crook just lords it around in the lounges, picking up pints and chatting to agents and contacts, and then turning up just in time for the game.
It's called networking.
And looking for the next 66-1 somewhere.
Yeah. Well, if you can share that, I'm quite happy. I'm quite happy to be the junior partner in that conversation. Paquetá had a big say in the win over Newcastle. Seems to have responded well to stories linking with him with a move. He sort of came out and poo-pooed that, didn't he, last week? And we mentioned that on the podcast. Burnley, a bit huff and puff, but yes, much better than I think many people expected. Nottingham Forest against Leeds Sunday afternoon. We'll be following this one live on Game Day Live when Crook and I are at Manchester City, Liverpool. It's another big game down the bottom. They look as if they turned a corner under Dyche. Now, we're recording this on Thursday ahead of all of the Europa and Conference League games. But Leeds, a little bit similar to Burnley, not very good away from home, are they?
No, they're not. And they don't score enough goals. Was it 9 in the first 10 games, which I think is an issue when you're going to concede goals as well. But with Forest playing on Thursday night, that may give Leeds a little bit of an advantage, but you would still fancy Sean Dyche's team if they can solve their own defensive issues. And we talked about this, 1 clean sheet in 18 games. You would expect that to turn around under Sean Dyche, and they've got the firepower. I think at the other end, I thought Morgan Gibbs-White was somewhere near back to his best against Manchester United after a pretty subdued start to the season. So, yeah, I think this is a good opportunity for Forest. And as you mentioned, it's a huge weekend, isn't it, with so many of the relegation-threatened sides playing each other, and we're going to get a few of these weekends in the not-too-distant future.
If Forest and West Ham win this weekend, it tightens up the whole gap between the bottom 4 teams to just 2 points, which would be quite fascinating. At the top, it's quite tight as well. If you look at the gap between Arsenal and second place Manchester City, there are more points separating Manchester City in second and Aston Villa in 11th than they are between Arsenal and Manchester City. Arsenal that far ahead at the moment. Of course, all that could change this weekend. Arsenal go to Sunderland, and Manchester City and Liverpool clash on Sunday in a massive, massive game.
Could I just make a bold prediction? I didn't get a chance to really give my input to the Sunderland game, and this is a bold prediction. It sounds ridiculous. I don't think Arsenal will drop points. I do think they're going to concede this weekend, and they've not done that in their last 8 games. I think Sunderland will score against them.
Hold on, sorry. They haven't conceded in 8 games, and you're predicting at some point it's going to come to an end. Is that really a bold prediction?
I'm predicting it will come to an end at the Stadium of Light.
Okay, well, you've interjected here just to say that. So if it doesn't happen, we're just going to obviously rinse you for it because you wanted to make that call. I mean, it's not the biggest, boldest call in the world, but okay, well done. Thank you very much for your contribution.
Doesn't it say how far Arsenal have come that making the bold prediction, not that they'll lose, they'll actually concede a goal?
Right.
Maybe he's.
Do you know what's funny is that after eight games, he's now saying they I think they'll concede this weekend. I mean, crikey, they're going to concede at some point. It's not the biggest claim in the world, but do you know what? I know what's going to happen as soon as Isidore scores after 10 minutes. Told you. Straight through on the
exactly
WhatsApp.
What's going to happen?
Told you.
He's just seen it 66-1. That's why.
Oh dear, Crookie, I've missed you. Actually, I haven't seen you for almost a week. What is going on here? So I'll see you on Friday. Looking forward to that. Tottenham against Manchester United is live on talkSPORT 12:30. Millwall Preston same time on talkSPORT 2. Game day live with Adrian Durham and Scott Minto goes around the grounds. Mickey Gray is there as well, involved in that. He's going to the Everton game. Stoke commentary live on talkSPORT 2. That's the game that Adrian is going to be at because it's the top 2 in the Championship. Chelsea Wolves also live on talkSPORT on Saturday night 8 o'clock. And game day live 1:30 on Sunday, me, the Saltmeister, Perry Groves, and Lucy Ward are going to be live from the Manchester City Liverpool game. Looking forward to that. Can't wait. We've got Brentford, Newcastle, and Aston Villa Bournemouth to worry about as well. That's it from us. We'll be back on Monday to review all the Premier League action. And whatever you do, make sure you tell your friends about Premier League All Access from talkSPORT.